Welcome to the B Block Podcast. I am your host, Brandon Scott. I appreciate you for being here with me. Whether you're listening on an audio only platform, I want to let you know I appreciate it. You can also find us on YouTube, the B Block Podcast on YouTube as well. If you're watching us on YouTube, you can also check out the podcast on any audio platform, wherever it is that you prefer your podcast. Now that we got all of that out of the way, I want to get straight to it. I know it's been a while since we talked. I still been getting used to my new setup, and I hope y'all like it, man. Check us out on YouTube if you're not already, man. I'm getting a little comfortable here. Hopefully that means that we can visit a little bit more regularly. But I got to get right to it, man. The AP poll came out today, and we're doing this podcast on Tuesday afternoon during my lunch break. And I was looking at the AP poll because I know we were all anticipating that Texas would fall, since obviously they lost to Ohio State. And I don't know, like, I think I allowed myself, as you can see above me right now, there is a decorative Texas banner. I root for the Longhorns, and I think I allowed myself to buy into the hype, a lot of it based off of the last couple of years, but also a lot of it based off of this hype around Arch Manning. And Texas did not do well. They, of course, did not go to Ohio State and win like, a lot of people, I think, a lot of Texas fans were anticipating and hoping that they would. That did not exactly happen. Of course, Texas loses to Ohio State. And we'll talk a little bit more about the weekend of college football in just a second. But specifically to this game and everything surrounding Arch Manning, right? Texas falls, 7 spots, more than that, 7 or 8 spots. They were 1. I think they fall into 7. So 6 spots, I guess. And this game, this moment around Arch Manning in this debut, first of all, let me just get off that I was much for as underwhelming as Arch Manning was in this debut. Okay, and he was underwhelming to be sure. He had a couple of moments, had a good throw here or there, but for the most part, I know he threw it 30 times, but for the most part, it seemed like they were, I don't know, like they kind of, kept the reins in on him and didn't really let him do as much. You didn't see him throwing the ball downfield nearly as much as you would like to see. I don't know, let's say a Manning throw the ball downfield, even though he did get in 30 attempts. I'd be curious how many of those were short passes. From what I could tell, most of them were, with the exception of a couple. But like this was an underwhelming debut, and beyond that, like I wasn't as caught up with Arch as I was as a Texas fan, as I was caught up with Sark and how poorly I thought he performed as an offensive play caller in this game. I don't think he did nearly enough with Arch, or let Arch do nearly enough, I should say, as a quarterback. And particularly, man, early in the game on that 4th and goal play that I thought, I wouldn't say decided the game, but to me was the deciding factor or deciding moment in the game where I realized who was going to win and who wasn't, was in that 4th and goal play where they just decide to run it straight up the middle, quarterback sneak with Arch Manning, instead of, now mind you, they had been running the ball fairly well on that drive leading up to that moment. And instead of either giving it to a running back or what I would have done, running the bootleg with Arch Manning on the outside with enough room and enough space and enough time to get it in the end zone, that seemed like the obvious play to me. And instead, Sark goes with the most obvious failing option, like the option that was most obvious to fail. I didn't understand it. I thought that Sark was far less impressive than Arch was, but I digress on that. Like this Arch Manning thing was really, when you think about it, the case of us being in the age of the algorithm. Like that is the reason why the Arch Manning thing got so hyped up. The reason why Texas is overhyped and overplayed and over discussed is because Arch Manning, when it comes down to it, is a fine prospect, is a good player, is somebody that is good enough for you to think has potential to be great. Like, it is not out of the realm of possibility, and it's not outrageous that people think that Arch Manning could be a great player. The issue is the fact that he does have this potential, the fact that he is just good enough to be in this conversation makes it to where us as media and as an overall general public have the leeway to blow it way out of proportion, to blow the thing way out of proportion. And that's what we're doing in the age of the algorithm. I saw a lot of people talking about this. Like, what is it? Watching this game and watching Arch Manning, who is a talented player, but a lot of people watched this and thought, man, what is it about this dude that makes him so generational? Why are people saying that this is a generational prospect when, yeah, sure, he looks fine out there. He looks like he belongs out there, but more or less, he just looks like any other quarterback out there on a Saturday. Like, he doesn't look like the clear and obvious number one pick. But what it is that he is good enough to be out there, and his name is Manning. And in the age of the algorithm, the headlines, the search engine optimization, or whatever is the updated version of that, right? Like the AI optimization, like optimizing the algorithm says you put Manning AP number one, preseason number one, top rated, Manning top rated, these things in a search or in a headline, it plays better. It works better than defending champion or Ohio State. It just does. And that's what this was. That's what this, because there was just nothing about watching him or watching that team that made you say, you know what? That team deserves to be assumed better than an Ohio State team, even an Ohio State team that lost a lot of pieces. Just bringing back enough talent and bringing in enough talent to be able to stand on being the number one team. I thought that this was clear. Like, if you were basing this off of football and basing it off of just logic on the teams and who deserved to be there, there's no way Texas deserved to be number one. No way Texas deserved to be number one. And that ended up being proven on the field. And the reason why we got there in the first place is because we are in the age of the algorithm. And so what the Arch Manning debut should teach us is to caution ourselves about the algorithm and what it is really telling us. Because what it's really telling us is that there is a thirst for your curiosity. There is a thirst for your interest and what you want to talk about. But it's not necessarily all baked in reality. Right? That like that to me is the ultimate takeaway with this Arch Manning thing, is that all of the hype, all of the hoopla, the number one ranking for Texas going into the season, it is based off of capturing your attention and not in reality. I'm not saying that the kid can't be great. I'm just saying that we're playing a game here. We are playing a game here because there's nothing about this kid. And then, like, I thought about it, the quarterback matchup with Clemson and LSU. Thinking, man, you switch those names, switch the last names of the players, of the quarterbacks, and either one of those teams would be number one. Clemson would have been number one going in with Arch Manning, and not based off of. I'm not saying switch the player. I'm saying switch the name, switch the last name. Clemson would have been number one. LSU would have been number one. Do the thought experiment. I wonder how many of the top 25 teams going in do you think, if you had made their quarterback last name be Manning, not even switch, like just keep the quarterback as is, but make his last name be Manning and let him be, Archie Manning's grandson and Peyton and Eli's nephew and all of that. Okay, Cooper's son. Make that be the case for any of the quarterbacks that was in the top 25, for the teams that was in the top 25. And would they have been number one, or they at least would have been ranked higher and possibly number one, maybe at least all the teams in the top 10. Make their quarterback Arch Manning. They're number one. And then you couple that with the Texas brand, it made too much sense. It made too much sense to do it according to the algorithm. But that's all it was. What makes Arch Manning a generational prospect? Being famous in the age of the algorithm. That's it. Gosh, man, I feel bad because it's like I'm crapping on Arch Manning when it's really not. It's really not Arch Manning. It's really a critique on us as a as an overall media producer and consumer. So like us as media and us as the general public that consumes media. It's a critique on us and how we operate overall and just kind of how the system works now, as opposed to Arch Manning. There's nothing wrong with Arch Manning. Arch Manning is just fine. He's doing just fine, doing what he can. Don't know if he's actually a generational prospect. Don't have anything that tells me clearly and obviously that he is one. But I'm just explaining to you how it is that we got here to this point in the conversation, that we're overblowing Texas. We're perhaps overblowing Arch Manning, all in the name of fame. So aside from Arch Manning and Texas losing to Ohio State or Ohio State beating Texas, and by the way, I don't know if I mentioned, should have, jumping Penn State as the number one team in the nation, as they should. Aside from that part, was anybody else like just overall underwhelmed and disappointed by the week one slate in college football overall? Maybe it's just me and I'm the problem for some of what I just talked about, overrating Texas, even though you can justify, no matter how you get to the number one overall team, what the reasons are. Number one, Texas, Ohio State, the history, both recent and even beyond. Like it makes the brands themselves. Texas, Ohio State would have been big no matter what, as long as they're both good, and they are. But maybe it was my mistake for not putting enough into the games that did turn out to be more interesting, like Florida State upsetting Alabama. Of course, the Miami and Notre Dame game was a big one, and those were the two more entertaining games of the slate. And for me, they were on the back burner. They were like the other two games outside of Texas, Ohio State, and of course Clemson and LSU. And so those games ended up being duds. Like for me, it wasn't there. It wasn't there. Y'all tell me if y'all feel any different. But obviously, I mentioned Texas and Ohio State was kind of a defensive struggle, a defensive battle, and there was just nothing about Texas that felt like they lived up to the moment. So that game was mostly boring. I wasn't that entertained watching LSU and Clemson either, if I'm being honest with you. And we talk about the quarterbacks being Heisman candidates, and it's not like they didn't play well or that they were bad per se. They just didn't look like Heisman candidates. And maybe that's what the purpose of this podcast is to kind of crap on the overall quarterback class that we're looking at, the current QB slate or the current QB landscape in college football that we're talking about. But in week one, it was just disappointing for me. It left a lot to be desired. Now, of course, we did have some entertainment in watching North Carolina. Look, watching the Bill Belichick experience kind of just begin in flux the way it did, and then this being what it looks like on the field feels like the perfect I don't want to say ending, but the perfect development in the storyline. But of course, TCU takes North Carolina behind the woodshed. That wasn't an entertaining game, but I would say it was an entertaining moment watching them and just everything that went around that, the pomp and circumstance, the fame that went with that, them showing the celebrities before the game, Michael Jordan up there in the box with Roy Williams and Lawrence Taylor, and all of this like anticipation, and they go out there and they score first, and it looks like they're out to like this thing's going to be around in success. Like they're going to at least be able to handle TCU at home, and no, not at all. Not at all. So like that at least turned out to be entertaining. But overall, man, I mean, what do we really get? Like we got a couple of games. Okay. We got Florida State upset in Alabama. That was huge. And of course, that ended up, since I mentioned the rankings to start this thing, that ended up flipping the rankings a lot. A lot of teams that got bumped down because Florida State had to be respected and be bumped up for what they did, and of course Alabama goes down, and so that's going to have long term implications for the season. That's significant. I don't want to downplay that game, the significance of it, or that moment, but just overall, man, I guess we had four marquee games. I thought between Texas, Ohio State, LSU, and Clemson. The upset potential with Florida and Alabama, and ended up actually being that, and then Miami, Notre Dame. Two out of the four to me ended up at least living up to the billing, if not exceeding it. So I guess if you batting 500, you can't be too mad. But only got two out of the four, and the top two that I was expecting didn't quite live up to it for me personally. So you got that. And then you had, of course, this spectacle on the other night with Bill Belichick and North Carolina and TCU, which was a dud of a game, but at least was a spectacle nonetheless. And I guess getting a look at, I know Ron, when I did the drive last week on Sports Radio 610 with Ron the Show Hughley, he was big on watching what Colorado would look like with their quarterback situation without Shador Sanders, and what that would look like. And that looks fine. I know Colorado lost, but that looks like it could actually, be worthwhile. So I mean, we had some moments. It wasn't completely boring, but it was a disappointment. I think overall a dud in week one, especially when you consider that week two, of course, is the money week for the smaller schools when they go and pay to get beat up by the bigger schools, and you don't have a whole lot. Like you got, I think maybe one matchup between top 25 opponents coming up, and not a whole lot there until week three. So disappointing week one for me. Y'all let me know what y'all think. If y'all had anything that stood out to y'all in week one, or had maybe a little bit more fun watching it than I did. Now, I don't want to get out of here without hitting on some Texans, because there were a couple of interesting developments early on in the week ahead of us doing this podcast. Found out that CJ Gardner-Johnson, the safety that was hurt at training camp back when they were in West Virginia at the Greenbrier, went down with what looked like a significant knee injury, but not apparently significant enough to keep him out of week one, which is a blessing for the Texans. So that's good news for them. And like to me, just overall good news for the team, because as we talked about quite a bit, it's got the potential to be like, the strength of the team is the fact that they can attack you from the edges with Daniil Hunter and Will Anderson Jr. But the fact that they can also present perhaps the best secondary in the league, like from end to end, like from or pound for pound, however you want to look at it, from position to position, from like what they're able to do with their nickel defender and Jalen Petrie being kind of like this hybrid rover linebacker type, defensive back linebacker type, and what they have from in the safety position with CJ Gardner-Johnson, Kalen Bullock, and of course an all-pro cornerback Derek Stingley, and a potential Pro Bowler in Kamari Lassiter. Like, this is a legit secondary, and CJ Gardner-Johnson, to me, adding him to it, because these are mostly guys that were coming back, right? That they already had. Adding CJ Gardner-Johnson to the mix is, to me, what takes it to the next level. And I don't think he's out there week one. And I think he's listed as questionable. D'Amico Ryan said that they expect him to be ready, available, ready to go, something to that effect. But I don't expect them to say that or for them to put him out there if he's not actually ready to go. I don't sense that the team would rush him or that they would allow him to rush it to get out there. I think the moment is just too precious for that. And you gotta if it takes a couple of weeks for him to be ready, then it takes a couple of weeks. So if they're saying he's out there and ready to be out there for week one, I trust that, and I think that changes things. And the other bit of news is that Matt Stafford's going to play. Good luck to Matt Stafford. How would you like to be Matt Stafford, who's older than I am? Okay, I'm 30. We're around the same age. I'm 36. I think Matt Stafford is older than me, and has obviously had some injuries. Right, there was question if he'd be able to play. Word on the streets been taking word on the streets that he's been taking epidurals and whatnot. And life is hard on Matthew Stafford going into year 17. And I think Matthew Stafford is still one of the better quarterbacks in the league, even at this age, even with all of this wear and tear on him. But how would you like to be Matthew Stafford and open your season with Daniil Hunter and Will Anderson Jr. coming off the edges? Okay. An incredible amount of depth on the inside. Like I know a lot of people talk about the Texans' interior defensive line being one of the questions or weaknesses of the team. Not if you're paying attention. I think they got a bunch of dudes that can get after it, whether it's in the run game, whether they want to attack you in different ways with a bunch of different pass rushers and obvious passing situations. Like they got a lot of options on their defensive line. And I think overall that is the strength of the team on top of what I just mentioned with this secondary that has the potential, if healthy, to be the best secondary in the league. Like the defensive line can be disruptive and really good, even if they are without one of these pieces. Let's say, God forbid, is Will Anderson Jr. or Daniil Hunter. But certainly with a number of these other guys, which some of them have been hurt or are hurt, right? Like Danico Autry's not available. They got guys that have been hurt and been banged up. But without any one of these guys, it's still enough of them for it to still be like a game record type of situation. Whereas you take CJ Gardner-Johnson out of the mix for the Texans secondary, and it changes the dynamic a little bit. You add him, and conversely, it changes the dynamic in the other way. And you're talking about a championship caliber defense. We've been talking about it all offseason about whether this is a championship caliber defense. Now that we're getting closer to the season, the rubber is actually about to meet the road, and we're going to get to watch them against what we expect to be a still a pretty prolific offense with Matthew Stafford. We'll see what it looks like with Devontae Adams in the mix. But I'm excited about this, man. I'm excited about this. This is good news. Now, we also do need to mention, because I don't think we've covered this on the podcast yet, the life without Joe Mixon. I know the last time I talked on here, when I talked about the quarterback, or I should say the running back situation for the Texans, the last time I discussed it, there was some concern because there were no obvious running backs to me based off of what we were seeing in training camp or in preseason up to that point that said, hey, man, this running back's got to make the team. This is going to be the bell cow. This is the clear-cut guy if Joe Mixon's not available or ready to go. And we found out since that he's not going to be available for the first 4 weeks. Who are they going to lean on? Who is that guy? Who is that collection of guys? Do they have it? I feel like after the last couple of weeks of the preseason and toward the end of training camp, we started to get those questions answered. And now we know that there is going to be a life without Joe Mixon for the first 4 weeks. It is not ideal. It is not something that the Texans, or a situation that the Texans want to be in. But I don't think it is as dire as it felt at that time. Let's say going into that second preseason game against the Panthers. Like, based off of how they ran the ball against the Panthers and then how they finished things out, okay, against the Vikings. Or I'm sorry, how they, I should say, how they finished things out, and how things went against the Panthers, and then how they finished things out. I thought that this was them sort of showing us that they actually do have something there at running back between Nick Chubb and Woody Marks. Like I think we saw enough from those two to feel good. And Damian Pierce, I think, is just going to benefit overall from being in a system, and he's talked about this, being in a system that more so maximizes what it is that he does well. So, like, I think that the collection of Chubb, Marks, and Pierce can get you by for 4 games. And we'll see within those 4 games if it can get you by longer than that if it has to. And I think it might have to. Like this Joe Mixon situation and whatever it is exactly. And we've seen how they don't want to talk about it. There's not a lot of information out there about it. There's a lot of frustration from media that I understand. I don't necessarily share the frustration, but I certainly understand where it comes from because I get the pressure of the position that they hold as being newsbreakers for whatever that's worth and whatever that means. But I also get where the team is coming from, where they're like, look, this is the situation. He ain't available. He can't play. And when he can play, we'll let you know. And that's all we really got for you. Like, I understand where everybody's coming from with it. But based off of the back and forth and how it's going, doesn't seem like Joe Mixon is going to be available anytime soon. Certainly not those 4 games because he's ruled out. But I wouldn't hold my breath about the fifth game. It's possible we don't see this dude until after the bye week. I'm fully preparing myself for that. So life without Joe Mixon is not ideal, but I think it's something that they'll be able to survive, at least from the way it looks right now, something that they'll be able to survive between Nick Chubb, Woody Marks, and Damian Pierce. And look, man, I don't know why it was that I was forgetting that they played the Lions to end the preseason, but that just tell you that these 2 weeks between the preseason and the start of the season is way too long. Because I'm like, wait a minute, somebody in Middle America, NFC North, Vikings, Lions, who they played again? Like, I got the Lions and the Vikings turned around, but shit happens. All good. The Lions and the Panthers games, what I was saying earlier about the games where the run game to me convinced me more so than what I've been watching at practice. And I talked about this on the radio, but I'll mention it here on the podcast one more time that like I feel like I put way too much weight into what I was seeing on the practice field and not enough patience for what I might see in a game scenario and how different. And Clint, did shows with Clint where he talked about this, Clint Sterner, where it's like certain guys don't pop in practice the way they do in the game because you can't practice the way you play in the game. And so Nick Chubb is one of those guys where it's not clear and obvious until you watch him in the game what it is that we're talking about. And he's not as explosive as he used to be. But explosion was never really the calling card or the heart of his game, the value, the true value in Nick Chubb. It was man, you got to tackle this guy. You got to bring him down. He's running, and it ain't about him running fast. It's about the fact that he's running, and you have to tackle. And that is not an easy job or something that anybody should envy, is tackling Nick Chubb. And you can't see that the same in practice because they don't practice that way. So I think I put too much weight into that, not enough value into what Nick Chubb brings to the table. Woody Marks is somebody that I've been excited about since they drafted him. And lo and behold, shows up in the game in a way that wasn't clear and obvious in practice. But I mean, he had some moments in practice too, but maybe somebody that was a little bit an afterthought a little bit when I'm thinking about what they got at running back. I think he's going to be a true gamer for him. And so those are two right there. And the Damian Pierce is a question, but we know what that looks like, or at least what that looked like his rookie year when at least he was in a system that more so suited him. Not saying he's going to be rookie year Damian Pierce, but do we get something closer to that than what we've seen over the last couple of years? Does he get that opportunity between Nick Chubb and Woody Marks being fully capable of carrying that load? We'll see. But I think that combination of those three guys is one that the Texans can hang their hat on, one that Texans fans can hang their hat on. And so I'm not nearly as worried as I was at one point about the Texans run game. I know the last time that we talked, it seemed like I was pretty worried about it, but I'm feeling a lot better these days. So We'll see. We'll do this again before they play on Sunday. 3 o'clock kick, 3:20 kick. So that means we're gonna get started a little bit later on Sunday. We'll talk well before then and kinda look ahead to the game. Some of the stuff we're hearing out both NRG Stadium and out there in LA about the Texans. A lot of interesting nuggets to get to. Make sure that you are following the podcast wherever it is that you listen on the audio platform and that you check us out on YouTube as well. I appreciate y'all for joining us. Also want to shout out Foolish Club Media. We are a partner with Foolish Club Media. Love what we're doing over there. Until next time, I appreciate y'all and y'all be good.